All right, I think we are live. So let's welcome everyone to the historic, groundbreaking first episode of Double Book, the show where we dive deep in the book stories and the brilliant and possibly unhinged minds behind them. Today, I'm honored to have with us a man whose writing is so gripping, so immersive, and so packed with action that I'm generally concerned that this man might be from the future. That's right, folks. Our guest is none other than Aaron Payne, the mastermind behind Falling Into Oblivion, a sci-fi and cyberpunk epic that will leave you questioning reality. So, without further ado, welcome Aaron to the show.
Oh my goodness. That intro, man. You hyped me up big time and I feel honored, one, for the intro alone, and then two, being your first live stream ever. Oh my god. It's crazy. So
Yeah, no,
congratulations on your live stream and your channel too. I see you popping up and interviewing some um, really cool up and coming offers here pretty soon. And I saw you just read Mushroom Blues too, so I love that. So I just love everything you're doing, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate that, Aaron. I do appreciate you being the first on here. You know, I've been a fan of your channel for a while and then was a huge fan of your book. Huge fan. It was so much fun going through and reading it. I may want to go through today and jump into your inspirations, your stories, where you want to go forward. But for those few that might have not read your book yet, I'm curious if you could, or asking if you could give us a quick synopsis of your book.
Absolutely. That's going to be right here, Falling Into Oblivion. And this is the first book in the Tendrils of Chrome series. It is about a detective who is trying to make ends meet. I think an easy way to kind of just mash it up between two different books, Dresden Files meets Blade Runner. And I love those two series right there. And that's kind of two inspirations for me. And that's kind of where it all started, was those two books get mashed up into one. And essentially, you're following a detective who is on a ever-winding chase, a discovery in terms of modifications that are potentially causing people to go brain dead. And our main character, Soul, he goes down this a winding path that leads him deeper and deeper into the depths of grime and getting into deeper in Knox City, which is not a very nice place. And he's just trying to make it home, right? Trying to make it home to his family in a very extraordinary situation. Ordinary guy just trying to get home, but some extraordinary things happen along the way.
Fantastic. The only other caveat I would say is Saul is so realistic. I think I messaged you as soon as I finished the book that I
Yeah.
appreciate how you made Saul real. It wasn't a character who is like, okay, he's always going to do the best for what's the best thing to go through and do. He is so real as a character. Like the struggles he goes through is, I was going through like, yes, I would have done the exact same thing. Like, was it the best thing for him to do?
I know.
Sometimes no, but it was real. And that's what I really loved his character. He was
Mhm.
so well done. So well done.
That's exactly one of my goals, was to make him feel real and just put a normal person, an average Joe like you or I, in a situation to where he has to make realistic decisions, and it winds him down this crazy path, and he's just trying to make it home, right?
Mhm.
Um, I love that about the main character. He's someone that I really connected with as well, especially from a family perspective. And that's kind of where a lot of his decisions came from, was just something deep rooted in me, is to put your family first. And sometimes you have to make some crazy decisions to make sure your family is taken care of. That's kind of where the essence of Soul came from, was family first, everything secondary.
Yep. That was great. All right. So let's, before we jump too much into the story, because I do have a lot of specific questions, non spoiler for Molly, because I know she's getting ready to read your book next. But let's jump back a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming a writer? What led you up to deciding to put pen to paper?
That's a great question, and I think most of it really came from me starting this booktube journey of mine as well, a little over a year ago now. And maybe 3 or 4 months in, I was like, I want to talk to some of these authors and get their perspective. Just one, just talk to them, right, and bring them on the channel. At first, when I started down that journey, I really didn't think I would get any responses back, but about 95% of authors that I reached out to did respond back and said, "Oh, heck yeah, I'd love to come on the channel," which was mind blowing to me. One, because, before BookTube, I was just, reading for fun, not really talking about it online anywhere. And then a few channels like Patrick Leo and Library of a Viking and a few others. You know what? They gave me the inspiration and wanting me to start my own little thing, um, because I had a few buddies who started YouTube channels as well, but they primarily focused on gaming and like indie type of games. And my friend group, they really did not read that much, so I didn't really have a lot of people to talk to about these books and these stories that I'm reading. Like when you read through a Sander Lanch um, part in a Way of Kings or whatever Stormlight Archive book, you're like, I gotta talk to someone about this, right? If I talk to my wife, she's gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about, but stop calling me brightness. So, um, so I wanted a spot to talk to people, just get my thoughts out there. And that's when I started the channel, and then I started the Book and Brew, where I basically brought on authors, and we had a beverage, usually alcoholic, like a beer, just to taste some beer while we talked about books, and it was a lot of fun. And in that journey, I talked to a lot of indie authors, and these indie authors are really the ones that gave me kind of like the spark underneath my butt to say, you know what, I can do this too, right? It was really Michael R. Miller, who wrote the Songs of Chaos series, really put it underneath me to start up. I think the day after my interview with Michael R. Miller is when I started actually writing. And then 3 months later, I had a story, the first draft of this book here. The very first scene that came to me was the introduction to this book. That was the very first scene that came to me, and from there, it expanded to this whole story as what it is as you read, and also sequels as well. So there's a whole arc that I have in mind for this character. So I gotta say thanks to the indie authors I've been talking to in the BookTube journey. I've only been here for a year, a little bit longer than that, but talking with them, they put it in perspective. You know what? Nah, I can try this out too and see where it goes. And so far, I've been really happy with the reception of the book. My first, foray into the writing scene ever. I'm pretty happy so far with everyone's responses to it so far.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a cool origin story. That's a cool one of like not being, because I've heard some interviews and some authors go through, like, have always wanted to go through and write. That's kind of been my passion, but love hearing your story. And then people like Ryan Skeffington also, who's on, who just was like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my foot in the door and actually attempt to go through. And both of y'all's books they're so awesome. They're so much fun. I don't have any awesome stories in my head. Maybe one day I'll have that aha vision moment that you had, and we might be down that avenue as well. So you mentioned a few hobbies that you have. So you have friends who do a lot of gaming and stuff like that. Is there any other big hobbies you like to go through and do when you're not outside of reading or writing or anything like that?
Oh yeah. So yeah, gaming is one of them. As you can see, I have Master Chief behind me, right? He's Halo. There's actually some big Halo inspirations in this story right here as well. So a little spoiler warning right there. Or what do you call it? Easter egg, not spoiler. Easter eggs. Outside of gaming and reading, I do enjoy going to the gym, working out. I got a home gym in my garage, thankfully. After COVID came through, I was like, I need a spot to where I can just go to the gym. And what's great about audiobooks is that you can listen to audiobooks while working out. So it's like a win-win, right? You get to listen to an awesome story while getting some gains on.
That's awesome. Is Halo your favorite video game?
Halo, Bloodborne, Death Stranding are a few. I love Death Stranding, even though it's kind of a weird game. A lot of people say it's like a walking simulator, but if it is a walking simulator, it's the best walking simulator out there.
I have never heard of that. So I just wrote it down to go through and check Death Standing. Is that a console or is that a PC game?
It's PC and console. Death Stranding by Hideo Kojima. He made the Solid Snake games, Metal Gear Solid, if you've heard of
Okay.
those ones.
Yeah. Awesome.
But I love those games. So good.
Cool. Yeah, I've been so I kind of fell out of playing video games for a while and I feel like I'm still behind on stuff. I just haven't been able to go through and catch up
Mhm.
when everyone's talking about all these games and I'm like, I've not heard of 98% of these. Like I know old school Halo. I used to play Halo 2 all the time. And then I used to go through and do like Call of Duty and Madden was kind of my go-to two games. So awesome. So I do want to go through and give some shout outs. We have a bunch of people on
This
real
is
quick.
awesome. Yeah,
And
thanks
then
everyone for joining.
we got Mr. Ted. Hey, Ted. How's it going, buddy?
Welcome.
Miss Molly McCobb, who is planning on starting your book, I think, very soon. So I'm excited to hear her thoughts.
And I've heard fantastic things about Dark Bloom as well.
Oh, it's so good. It's so
I need
good.
to check it
It's
out.
so good. It
I've
is
only heard amazing things.
such an emotional roller coaster. Like I think I binged it in like a day and a half, and then
Dang.
I was so angry at so many of the characters. Like she wrote them so well that I was like physically angry. And I reached out to her. I'm like, why did you make me hate this person so much? She did so good.
Those
So
are the
good.
best characters though, because like they stick in your mind, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm very excited for her second book. So once she's gets working on that, I'll jump into that amazing world. We got Mr. Ryan Skeffington here. What's up, Ryan?
My soul's eternal dreams. Here we go.
We got Brian. Brian is awesome. Oh, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Tim McKay. How's it going, Tim?
Another book with the word fall in it. I can always support that. I always support that. It's great.
Yeah. So I do want to jump into your creative process because I'm always curious on processes. Just because my background with my job, I work in project management, so my job's always diving deep into people's processes to try to go through and learn about it and try to help advance those. So, what does your research process go through and look like when you're going through and writing a story?
It is a lot of. Well, I'll tell you about the structure first in terms of like either a planner or like a plotter or a pantser. Um, I quickly learned that I am definitely a pantser in a sense of the scene comes to me at that moment when I'm writing. So I have no like structure in mind in terms of what's going to happen. I had the general idea of what I wanted the main character to go through, and I even knew what the end, what was going to happen, but I didn't know how he was going to get there. And that was kind of the fun part, was just figuring out from A to B what needs to happen for Soul, and what's the worst things I need to put him through to make it worth it. And that's when there's so many random things that came to me throughout the writing journey. I was like, what can make this even worse for Soul? That was a lot of fun doing that. In terms of research, so when I'm going through particular scenes, one thing that was big for me was actually like the police hierarchy in terms of structure and like who reports to who, right? Our main character is detective, but who does a detective usually report to? Right? Who is their boss? And also, how do they get cases in the first place? And how long? Like, are they assigned a case? I had no idea. I didn't know any of these answers. So that's when I went into a lot of research. I actually looked into my local police down here in Florida, like my local county's police force in terms of the structure. I looked at the very top, the sheriff level, and it's kind of like trickled down in terms of the hierarchy or the tree view. And that's when I was just researching big time into just overall detective police structure. and also lingo. There's a lot of lingo I had no idea about, so I had to look into that in terms of normal things that police officers would say, or going through like a crime scene. Are there certain things that usually happen that always happen in a crime scene? I wasn't really sure. Only the extent that I had was watching detective TV shows, or like what's that show called, Hannibal. Watching that process. Um, so there was a lot of research into that. Also, in terms of how the city works, because in my world, the air is toxic in a sense of it's breathable, but it freaking sucks to breathe. Like it's really painful, but it is breathable. So people walk around with face masks, like air filtration masks that clean the air so they can actually walk throughout the city. And I wanted to research, how is that possible? Like, is it remotely possible for that to exist? And also, what is needed? What type of mask is needed? And what is necessary to clean the particles? And does it make sense? Does smells go through the mask? Like, there is so many tiny little things that I was researching, or like, what is the pressure needed to crack someone's skull? Like, there's just weird things you have to research when you're going through the story, but it was all on the scene in terms of what was presented to Soul was like kind of the things that I was researching into.
So, all right, two questions, follow-up question to that. So, did you go to the police station and have a conversation on, hey, I'm writing a book, I would like to interview someone, and say, first question, what happens when I bash in someone's skull? Or did you Google it, which then has you on a list? So just curious. Either way, I feel like there's questions, there's follow-up questions there.
I did not talk to anyone, and I did Google it, but I tried to put it in the most like scientific way to where it's not bashing in someone's skull. Because I didn't want to Google exactly that, but in a scientific way. I was trying to get through it to where it makes sense.
Got it. So police wouldn't come to your house and have to have
Yeah.
follow-up questions. Makes sense. Definitely being in Florida, they would definitely come stop by and be like, all right, Aaron, we got to have a conversation.
It's for a book, I promise. Okay. For a book.
So when you're doing your research, were you just looking up, did you have your structure of, okay, this is what I want Saul to go through, let me do each individual points I want to go through and find out? Or were you doing some research and going, oh, wow, I didn't think about X, Y, and Z, I want to add that into my story? So which happened first, or is it a little bit of column A, column B kind of thing?
It was a little bit of both, especially going through the different drafts of the story, where there are particular scenes that I needed to add more background, more setting to. And that's when I had to research a little bit deeper into that particular scene or setting. Because the first draft was mainly just me getting like the main points across in the story, and then going back in afterwards and kind of fleshing it out a little bit. And like there are certain things that the character did or they saw that I had to make sure it kind of made sense. And like there was, and after draft 2, after the beta readers even went through it, I added a completely new character, one or two new chapters completely to the story, and actually went back to my editor to have her relook it over to see does it make sense in the whole scope of the story too. So it was a little bit of both, going in and out, kind of in flux.
That's cool. So you're a new dad, right? You have young kids, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
How was writing
15
with
months.
15 month? Oh, so you're in the grind. You're in the no sleeping grind right now. Oh man.
She's doing great with sleeping, thank goodness. So,
Oh,
but
that's
fingers crossed, though. Fingers crossed.
That's a blessing. My boys were so I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they still get up at like 4 in the morning every morning, which is 4. Yeah, 4:30. It's a good day if they sleep till 5 o'clock. Then I
No
slept
way.
in for the day. It's
Oh
it's
man,
rough.
I'm
It's
sorry.
rough. Yeah. So how is writing with little kids or your 15-month-old in the house? How does that process work for you?
It's very interesting. As you would expect, you need to Probably prioritize your time a lot in terms of what you're going to focus on. So number one, of course, is family, right, which kind of translates into the story a little bit. Number two was work, and then three was the whole like hobbies thing, right? So I love gaming, I love reading. I was trying to write as well, so I was trying to figure out when the heck am I going to do all these things, right? And sometimes I didn't do any of them. Sometimes I did all three in one day, depending on when I have time in that particular day. But usually it's mornings, man. Mornings are my prime time for hobbies in terms of writing, especially. That mornings to me were the best time to write. Like after noon, I just could not write anything else anymore, man. Where the words would just not come out of my fingers. It would, my best time to write was right in the morning, right when I wake up, which is kind of weird. But maybe it's just because, you know, coming right off of sleep, fresh brain, going into it, I stare at this white screen of just text, and then I just keep going. And that's the best time for me is the mornings. And usually, now my little one is sleeping until around 8 a.m. So getting up around 5 to 8 is when I have that time usually to dedicate to reading, gaming, working out, something along those lines.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I have to do all my stuff at night because I with them getting up at 4 in the morning, I'm like, what am I gonna just
Yeah,
get up
four
at
in the
2?
morning.
Yeah, I can't. So I'm hoping when they become teenagers and they start sleeping in, then I'm gonna get my revenge and I'm just gonna randomly wake them up at 4 in the morning. So it's gonna be fun. I'm counting down the days, counting it down. So being an author, what has been the most challenging and most rewarding part for you?
That's also a great question. I think it has to come down to feedback on the story. It's been amazing to have so many people so far read the story, but it's also been amazing to get so much feedback in a critiquing manner as well. In terms of with certain things could have been addressed. I could have approached certain scenes, certain characters a little bit differently, and it's really just a learning journey for sure. With this being my first book, and just taking everyone's feedback has one been very rewarding, but also a learning experience as well. Because there are some things I look back now and think, yeah, I can definitely improve upon, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do for book two in this series is kind of take that feedback and address it and take it to the next level for the story. Um, so that's been very interesting. One, because whenever you put something out in the world for people to consume, right, they have a right to critique it. They paid for it, and accepting that feedback for a lot of people can be very hard.
Mhm.
So I just got to put myself in that mindset of any critique, I think, is good critique. Any review is a great review, and I appreciate everyone just checking out in the first place. So it's been very interesting. But luckily, BookTube has kind of prepped me for that a little bit because when you put out a video, you can get a lot of opinions on your stance on a particular book. And that's just you reviewing a book, right? When you put out your own book, you put a lot of time into that thing.
Mhm.
So it's been very interesting to get the feedback like that, but it's been very eye opening as well.
That's a good way to go through and look at it. I know not a lot of people can do that where they can go through and kind of take themselves out of it and be like, hey, any feedback's good feedback. So that's awesome. You're able to go through and kind of like have a separation point between opinions and your art and your work and all the time and energy you went to put in to make this book. So that's awesome. You're able to go through and do that.
Not exactly, man.
So are there so from a inspiration perspective, are there any kind of authors that are currently writing that inspire you?
Jim Butcher is one who wrote the Dresden Files, if you read that.
Hmm.
I love his storytelling in terms of just quickly getting you up to speed with the characters you falling in love with Harry Dresden almost immediately.
Hmm.
I love his writing style. Um, Lately, someone that's been really a big influence for me now has been Stephen King. I just now got started reading his books, and now I can definitely see the hype behind some of these books that he's put out, like The Stand. The Stand, probably the best book I've ever read in my life. It's amazing for the characters alone, and the way he approaches characters. I'm really looking and trying to study it more because he is able to take a character and make them feel real like instantly. It's mind-boggling how well characters just flow from this guy. So I'm looking into that a lot. The only thing that's a little bit different for me is that I have been writing in a first person POV, and a lot of books that I read are in third person. So it's been trying to translate all these amazing words I'm reading across all these different books. That's usually in third person, but also trying to put it into a first person perspective. And everything is from the character's point of view. You're reading his thoughts. You're seeing what he's seeing or what they're seeing, and it's just trying to put that all together, right? All this amazing work that I've been reading, and make a story come across as compelling and fun, and something that really gets people to finish the book as well.
So Stephen King, you're reading The Running Man, aren't you? Isn't that the book you're reading?
I just started that yesterday, and I'm already almost halfway through it. It's awesome. It's so amazing.
It's on my list. I'm waiting for the library to get it in, and I was going to go through and read it, and then seeing your feedback on like you're like this is so good. It would you I can't you said something on I never thought I'd be excited to read like the Hunger Games type of story where it's like a game show thing. So I'm super hyped to go through and read it once it comes in. I'm gonna probably binge it. Like that's with being a reader who reads at night, it's kind of a double-edged sword because I can
Mhm.
go through and read. I know at 8 o'clock at night, everyone's in bed. I can start reading, but then there's times where I'm up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because
And
I'm
then you
just
wake up at 4?
and then they get up at 4 and I'm like, all right, well, my day gets started. So that's I'm hyped to hear that book is so good.
And I am also very honored that an author compared my book to The Running Man as well, where that was actually Scott Palmer. He said it's like a mix of The Running Man and Blade Runner. And I was like, I know Blade Runner. I have not read The Running Man, so that has to be on my list. And now it is. And I can definitely see some of the similarities now in terms of this dystopian aspect of it. And I haven't got to the part where he's actually running yet. I'm sure that's going to be a huge factor. But yeah, it feels like Squid Games, Hunger Games, people watching people suffer for fun. It's very intriguing so far.
I have you seen the so I'm assuming you haven't seen the movie. Have you the 80s
No.
movie? So that one
Mm-mm.
has Arnold in it as the Running Man. And then they're remaking it. That's I think the movie's coming out this year with I can't remember his name. The guy that was in Twisters, the second Twisters, the main guy.
His
He's
name Neil or something.
maybe
Maybe
I
not.
think.
I
Yeah,
might be way off.
yeah.
But they're
I can't
remaking
remember.
it.
They're remaking it. Yeah, it's coming out this year.
No way! Wow, I'm reading this at the right time then. Oh, this
Hmm.
is perfect.
Yep. That's why I wanted to jump into it. I was like, cool, they're remaking it. I'm going to go through and read the book because I remember watching the movie as a kid. And then, yeah, so I'm
Well, it's
super.
so short too compared to like I just finished The Stand like 2 days ago. That book took me over a month, almost 2 months to finish. I'm already halfway done with The Running Man, and so it's way shorter in comparison. So I bet you'll blow through it super quickly.
Appreciate you. It's Glenn
Glenn,
Powell. Glenn Powell.
yes.
Glenn Powell. Yes.
What did I
Yeah.
say? Neil? I was way
Neil. He
off.
said Neil. I just nodded and said, yeah, that's right. Because I couldn't remember. So yeah, so we're both wrong on that one. But yeah, The Stand is so good. I agree. I didn't start reading Stephen King until a few years ago. I think I started with The Stand and then started reading some of his newer books. I'm going back and reading some of his older books as well. And his character work is, I agree, they're so well done. So well done.
It's
And
amazing.
then you said you're a Butcher fan. Have you read all of the Dresden Files, all 18 of them?
Not yet. I think I'm on book 5 now, or book 6. So I
Oh,
still have a way to go, man.
you're in the
But
heart of it. You're in the heart of it.
yeah, I
It's
keep hearing though, like every time I start a new one, I keep hearing, "Oh, this is where the story really picks up. This is where you're gonna love it." Like every book that I go into, but I've been loving it since book one, so I think I'm in for a good ride.
oh yeah, if you're definitely in the minority of people who like the first 3 books. So
That's interesting.
I thought they were pretty good. But everyone else I've heard feedback from, it's like, just get past the first 3 books. I'm like, that's very hard for me to get through, just to get through the first 3 books. And I was like, if I like the first one, I'll continue it. I'm so happy I did. I binged it in like a year plus and just went through and read it. And they're so good. They're so good.
Just get through the first 3 books, and then
Yeah.
maybe the next 3, and then you're gonna get into it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of
Exactly.
reading. Come
That's
on.
it's so much reading, but I think they're fun. So yeah, if you're on book 6, you're going to start picking up on some craziness. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger in this world. So I think you'll have a fun ride. So
Cheers.
yes, you might I water, and then I think someone said something. I think I read it. I missed who said it. I'm sorry. This is not coffee. This is tea. I got
Ooh.
tea, not coffee. So I'm not drinking coffee in the middle of the night. But
That's why you're up till 2 a.m.
that's why I'm up till 2. I'm just all jacked up on coffee. Uh, so going back to your story, what do you hope readers go through and take away from your story? Is there any particular feeling or message you're hoping readers get out from reading just your first book?
That I think, even though you might be a normal everyday guy, you can be put in very tough positions where you have to make really big decisions as well. And sometimes those decisions will take you down the path that leads you into a metal dragon. But to be to be, I guess, clear, or not really clear, but just to have a really fun adventure through a crazy story, a crazy and grimy city that leads you down a path that is uh, mind opening in terms of the disparity between like the rich and the poor, and somebody who's just trying to get, at the end of the day, I hate when that happens.
Dealing with a metal dragon.
Oh, this happened to me yesterday. It's crazy. But I guess the message would have to be is that, family first. We make a lot of decisions for whatever it may be, but at the end of the day, blood is blood, and you want to make sure that you're there for your family and you're trying to provide. And that's kind of the idea behind the story. Our main character, Soul, and I really resonate with him a lot. He is somebody that I can see a lot of traits in myself in. And does he make the right choice, the right decision all the time? Probably not. But he makes his decisions for, in his mind, the betterment of his family.
I am very happy now that I said I like Saul at the beginning. That would have been so offensive. Like, I loved your story, but I did not like that Saul guy.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So, how many books you planning on doing in this world?
4 the main series, and then there's going to be side stories as well that are going to take place from different characters' POVs. I'm working on a short story right now that's from a different character's perspective in the same city, and it's going to touch on a lot of the same kind of like companies and ideas that were touched on in book 1, but from a different perspective. And it's been a lot of fun to write from someone else's perspective who has a different outlook on the city. And book 2 right now I'm working on with Soul, and it's going to be interesting to see where he winds up in book 2, because I don't want to reveal it too much, but the noir type of trope, noir type of vibe in book 1 is going to slightly be pushed away. It's going to be not the main focus moving forward.
Oh, cool. So that your short story you're working on, is it a character we've met? already?
No, brand new character.
Brand new.
Brand
Brand
new.
new. Okay. So how was that writing that brand new character? Did you go through and give this character a clear personality and a clear arc you wanted them to go through, or did you go
Mhm.
the same route like what you did with Saul, going, hey, this is their person, let me just throw things at them and see kind of how they go through and react?
Yeah, I wanted him to feel definitely distinct compared to Soul, so I needed to approach him a little bit differently. Um, so I wanted him to be where, like, if you were reading him, you wouldn't be confused if this was Soul or not, because Soul, he's kind of middle age, weathered, um, a little bit blunt sometimes. Or our new character is a little bit on the younger side, and he's kind of optimistic but also pessimistic at the same time in certain situations. And he's not that confident in himself. And I wanted to portray that in the mannerisms of him, the words, his dialogue, and kind of get that across. So there are some scenes I'm really happy that I've written so far. I'm really happy with in terms of the way I'm presenting him as a character. And I'm taking notes from Mr. King because his character work has been amazing, and I'm trying to take everything that I'm absorbing from his work, from The Stand and The Running Man so far, and bringing it into my characters as well.
That's good. That's going with the best. You jump it. Have you read his what was it? His writing? What is it?
On writing,
On writing. Yeah, that's it.
not yet, but it's on the list.
It's on the list. Okay. The ever ending, the never ending TBR. I hear you. So far, so for new writers out there, what has been the biggest lesson learned from being an indie author?
I think number one is to establish a um, a community. Number one is definitely have a community, get your brand out there. Um, whatever method that is, I think that is something that you should probably start right away. For me, it was starting this booktube journey, even though my goal when starting the booktube journey was not to write a book, it was just to talk about books. But that allowed me to kind of establish a community where I've been talking to a lot of indie authors, talking to booktubers, and getting a lot of feedback from these people and learning so much. Especially talking with the indie authors, I can't tell you how much I've learned from all these different people in terms of the writing process, distribution, the problems or the challenges that indie authors in particular go through compared to like traditional or trad pub. It's been eye opening. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot. But one big major helping stone or path to help you get you kind of a head start, and maybe not even a head start, but one way to make sure your book is even seen out there is to establish a community and start your brand in terms of putting yourself out there, making sure people know who you are as a person, because there's thousands of books that get put on Amazon every single day that don't get looked at because people don't know who this person is. Right? It's not going to be because you put a book on Amazon, people are going to buy it and love it. All right, it's going to be challenging, a lot of work to establish a community. But I think that's the number one thing. It's just to get started right now in terms of maybe even reviewing, like joining SFF Insiders or Fanfi Attic or any of these review blogs and just start talking about books and getting in the community.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. Definitely jumping in. And I agree. I don't think everyone, there's different avenues you can go through. You can, just do the social media avenue or jump on the booktube or even just go on the review. I think that's good to get community and
Mm-hmm.
branding as your top two. All right. I want to jump into book specifics. I'm going to keep this very unspoilery for anyone that has not read your book. For some reason, I'll give Molly a pass because she's going to read it, but anyone else does not read it. What are you doing? Go grab the book. It's amazing. So we'll start with some of these off the wall questions I have for you. So we'll start with an easy one and work into some of my crazy ones. So, what was your biggest challenge in building the world of Fallen into Oblivion?
I think trying to figure out how the city works, and centered around the air being toxic. Because I wanted something that was familiar, which is, of course, a high tech, low life situation, which you commonly see in the cyberpunk genre. So I try to make that very familiar, if you're familiar with the genre at all, but also try to make it slightly unique in the sense of putting a new challenge on the city itself, which our characters have to, live with. And that was one thing that I was trying to figure out. And to get the city to the point to where people are all wearing this face mask, in terms of how does that play out in a real world life, and making sure that it fits, right? It's not just like an afterthought. I wanted it to be a part of the city, and also like the establishments, right? Like I kind of went into detail a little bit in terms of, um, places have like these airtight sealed doors, and they have like little perimeters of like plexiglass that surround these different structures to make sure that the filtered air stays inside. So I wanted that to feel real and lived in, but also to where it's just like commonplace in the city, to where you see the graffiti, you see the marring, you see, um, just the grime on all these existing establishments. In addition to the people just wearing these masks, right? We have like barely functioning masks, but they do the job. But everyone's still getting around the city just fine, compared to the people who live up top,
Mhm.
right? In Viridian, who live in luxury. They have a different means of filtering the air. And I wanted to kind of highlight that in a sense where it makes sense in a dystopian perspective, but also still feel a little bit familiar. And I had a whole like info dump lore section on how that worked in the book in first draft that I took out because it's just not necessary. That's actually a learning point for me, was info dumps. I did a lot in my first draft, which I severely cleaned up in the version that you read. Um, but there was like a whole plague. it, it it goes into big detail in terms of the air being toxic, but um, try to make it work, make it feel familiar, but make it something that's slightly unique to Knox City, which is where the story takes place.
All right. So, if you could be magically put into this world for a day, what would you want to do?
I'd have to go to the club, man. Descent. I
Hmm.
have to go to the club and
Yeah.
check it out because it is. I love. I loved writing that particular scene. There's few chapters where he does visit that club. 'Cause it's just something I can vividly picture in my mind. You traversing through, and I want to
Mhm.
see that fleshed out and see it before my eyes, because that'd be kind of cool.
It would be awesome. I definitely felt when I was going through reading that part, I felt like I was there. Like I could visually picture everything in my head when we were going through the club. So that was my thought as well. Would be in that club and just sit there and experience the chaos of the different levels and everything. I
Hmm.
thought it'd be cool, cool stuff.
Well, I'm glad you liked it too, man.
Yeah, it was good, man. It was good. Are we going to go back in a few other books? Are we going to go back there?
We have to visit Descent at some point. We have to revisit it. We have to.
Perfect. Perfect. So, was there one small detail in your book that you are particularly proud of? Maybe that it's not that readers might have not noticed at all in the book. Is there something like, oh, I really enjoy this one part? So, I know you mentioned the club, you mentioned the atmosphere of the world. I didn't know if there was any like small details that you really enjoyed.
There's a few things that I'm pretty happy with. One, or there's a few sentences that I'm pretty happy with in terms of, like, I don't think I'm big on prose in the sense of it making it flower, like putting too much fluff into it. Like, I'm pretty straight and to the point in terms of the perspective of Soul, but there are some particular scenes or dialogue that Soul says that I'm pretty happy with. And actually, there's actually a few people that highlighted it like in their review, which I'm always like, nice. They focus on that particular sentence, which I'm really happy about. There's a few of them that I'm really proud of. One takes place in Vergosi. So anyone who has not read it, check out Vergosi when you get to that chapter. But there's also a lot of like Easter eggs I put throughout the book, from Star Wars to what do you call it, Halo to Neuromancer. There's a bunch of little Easter eggs I put throughout this book here. And when people do mention it, I'm like, oh yeah, they saw it. They saw it and they notice it, and that's always so fun to see people who notice those tiny little things that you don't think people will really see, but they pick up on. So it's really cool.
Awesome. All right, Neuromancer, Star Wars, Halo. It's the top
Mhm.
three. All right, I'm gonna go through it and I'm gonna check back and see if I can catch all the references in there because I feel like I've had to miss a good bit of them in there. So awesome. No, I love that. I love reading a story and then going like, I see the connection here. I see the influence that was brought on in the story. So if you could see your story adapted, what kind of medium do you think would best fit your story? Do you think a movie, a show, anime, a video game? What kind of
An anime would be pretty interesting, but I think for the length of the story, I think a movie would be able to capture it pretty well, because it is not a long, chunky book by
Mhm.
any means. I mean, it's only 300 pages, and also the fonts is size 12. So
Mhm.
my intent behind that was to one, get you to feel like you're reading it really fast. That's why the columns of text are pretty narrow, so that it feels like a page turner. Because that was my goal, was to make it feel like you're getting through the story really quickly. So for a movie, I think that would be perfect because the pacing, I feel like, can really capture the intent of it trying to be a thriller. And I feel like we can properly capture all the big plot points in a movie. And I think probably Ryan Gosling would be an awesome Soul, or what's his name? Robert Pattinson would be awesome as well. Um, I could totally see them playing the Soul character really well.
That was going to be my next question because I was trying to figure out in my head who would be the perfect Saul, and I think I would have to agree with Pattinson. I can see him definitely. Have you seen the Batman? Him
Oh
and
yeah,
the Batman, and that's the kind I would envision him be. Not the Twilight kind. Maybe you might not him sparkling around Knox City, but no, I could see him being that character. Yeah, no, I could see it. I could see it. I think that would be I think it'd be good. I think you need to make it happen. I think you need to make it happen.
you got any movie studio connections at all?
I'll have to check my notes. If I have any, I'll send them your way. No, no, yeah, I wish. I wish. I'm trying to get into finding some publishers and things like that to talk to more authors because right now I communicate mostly with the indie crowd, which I truly, really enjoy the indie authors. Not only are they very easy to connect with, and they're very like every single one I've spoken with is awesome, but from a story, even from a story perspective, I've catch myself enjoying indie books a lot more than traditional publishing. I feel like traditional side, it's like a hit or miss for me personally,
Mhm.
but consistently the indie route, I truly enjoy the books on a more frequent basis than I do non-indie, which I find very interesting.
The book landscape right now is very interesting in terms of going indie versus trad. I think the stereotype behind indie books is slightly swaying or fading away. I mean, there's always going to be some pretty low effort books out there, or
Mhm.
they don't put too much time. It's just getting your book to be read as an indie author, I think is the number one goal, right? And usually the people who put low effort into the book itself probably won't put that much into the marketing of it to get it out into people's hands. So if you see an author like Ryan Skeffington down here, who he was on the grind for people to read Lost Souls, and I bought in. I saw one of those posts where he was like mentioning Halo as well. I was like, sign me up. I'm down to read it. And I freaking loved it, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that the indie scene is growing, especially now that I'm in it as well in terms of an author. But I totally resonate with you in terms of almost every indie book that I've read so far, I have just thoroughly enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been definitely knocking it out of the park, which I've caught myself reading a lot more indie books lately. So there's thousands of them. Every time I finish one, there's like 5 more that pop up, and it gets me excited every time.
Those authors, though, they're able to push out a book like every 3 months. I don't know how they do it. I have no idea how they do it, but props to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish we could kind of blend it a little bit of those who take forever to write, where it's like 10 plus years to write a book, and then the ones that pop them out every 3 months. Like, can we just meet in the middle for both? Just meet in the middle a little bit for me, because I feel like I'm still waiting on the newest Game of Thrones book, and I feel like I'm going to be 76 by the time the next one comes out. But we'll see what happens. All right, so we've went through, and you mentioned you plan on 4 more books and some short stories, novellas for this world. Is there any other stories or any other genres you're looking to write in the future?
I think I would like to tap into the fantasy side of things, but it'll be more sci-fi fantasy or sci-fantasy. There is a idea that I've been toying around with my mind or inside my mind for a story that is very sci-fantasy, leaning more on the fantasy side of things, but it's only been something that's been going on in my brain. I really haven't. I've written maybe like a few sentences about it just to have those notes for later. But I really wanted to focus on fleshing out this story here and the short stories I have in mind for this universe before I tackled that. Because I'm having so much fun right now in Tendrils of Chrome, the series here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm really excited. When you projecting the net book 2 plan on coming out?
I'm hoping this year, in 2025. I have the cover for book 2 done, and it's mind blowing. I love it. It's, if you like this cover right here,
Mm-hmm.
just wait until you see book 2. I'm so ready for it. But I only have written 10,000 words for book 2 so far, with a planned. I'm kind of guesstimating, since I'm pretty much a pantser. It's going to be around 80,000 words, where this one was 69,000. So it's going to be a little bit longer, but still in like the thriller territory, to where you can finish it in 1 or 2 sittings as well. So I'm trying to keep all the books under 100,000 words so that they don't look intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And that in the future, my ultimate plan is to have a combined omnibus of all the Tendrils of Chrome books, in a really cool, book that's like this thick,
Mm-hmm.
of all the books combined. So that's kind of my ultimate goal.
Oh, that's gonna be cool. Those I always love going through. There's a few that I've been looking at to get, and I really like that. I think that's a good idea. Awesome. I'm very in love with that cover, and I'm really curious what the next one's going to be, because I know this one, it has that Lord of the Rings vibe. When I go through and I look at it, like first time I saw it, I'm like, it feels Lord of the Rings inspired. So I'm really curious on. I don't
You're
want to be
right.
spoiled. Oh, perfect. Look, I got one.
Yes. Inspiration was the Balrog and
Mhm.
Gandalf for this, but reversed.
Mhm.
So you're
Yeah.
completely on the money there, on the money right there.
Mhm.
Book 2, I feel like if you like the Lord of the Rings inspiration for the cover, I think you're gonna like book two's cover then.
Awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. Do you know when? Can you tease when we might be able to see that cover?
I mean, I can send it to you right now.
Awesome. Awesome.
But just to you.
Just I won't share it with anybody. I won't share it. Awesome. All right. Well, I really do appreciate it, Aaron, for jumping on and chit chatting with me. How can people connect with you and find your book?
Yes, thank you again for having me on. Your first live stream ever, by the way. I think this was so much fun. And thanks again for inviting me. One, for having me on. It's been awesome. And then two, for you reading the book and also leaving that amazing review. Like just watching someone review your book through a YouTube video is kind of surreal. Even though I was doing it for other people's books on my own channel, like I didn't take it from the other side of the field in terms of someone reviewing my book. It's so surreal having that happen. So I want to say thank you again. In terms of finding me, I have a booktube channel as well here on YouTube called Biblio Theory, so you can find me on there. I'm on X as well under Biblio Theory. To find my book, it's on Amazon. I also have signed copies as well on my website that you can pick up. I got hardcover and paperback, and if you do buy a signed copy, I got really cool little goodies that come with it, like a little dragon keychain that's like this big, which is really cool. So you can find me through that way. I'm hoping in the next fewish months to have a full-on cover reveal for book 2. I'm trying to hit a certain word count in terms of a milestone before I'm ready to show it off. And that's kind of a little bit about finding me and the book. Thank you again for having me on. It's been awesome. And for everyone for joining in too.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking it out.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Aaron. Thank you everyone for jumping on. And I'll have in the description, I'll have all your links on there as well so people can go through. And seriously, if you haven't read the book, you need to go buy it and check it out. It is fantastic. It's so good. It's so good. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Aaron. Everyone, have a fantastic evening. And I'll see you next time.
See you guys. Thank you.